What's going on, guys? And welcome to the first ever official episode of the Identity Podcast, featuring yours truly, DeAndre. Now, you might ask, what is the Identity Podcast? Well, we're going to get into that soon. We're going to get into that in a second. But first, before I say I appreciate y'all joining with me, sit back, relax, have a cup of coffee, kick your feet up, or if you're working right now, you driving your car, I hope you make it to your destination safe. Doing whatever you're doing, I appreciate you tuning in. That's all I got to say. And now, what the Identity Podcast is basically the best way I can summarize this is if you if you were say this isn't conclusive to this only, but this is the example that I'm using for myself. So say you're playing a sport and you're a college athlete or high school and you're just that's all you do. You're the baseball player and everyone knows you play baseball. Everyone knows that that's your thing. Um, and then after you graduate and you're no longer doing this, who are you? Who are you? And that's a problem a lot of people have once they finish what they're doing and what they think their identity is outside from what others are giving them, and they kind of lose themselves in the music the moment they want it. But the moment they want it never really came. And so now you got to kind of start over from scratch. You got to get back to the drawing board. You got to, just lay the plan out on the table and kind of figure out what's going to go where and how to put this puzzle piece together called life. And a lot of people deal with this. It turns into a mental issue. You kind of have self doubts about who you are. You have self doubts about like, well, I wasn't good enough. I'm not worthy of even like, some people even go as far as like showing my face in public, living because they have this shame upon them because of who they once were is no longer that person. And now they have to rediscover and redefine who they are. Now, that's what this podcast is about. Uh, it's very holds near and dear to my soul. I can relate heavily, which I will get into the whole story behind why I decided to start it and my epidemic when it came to this specific problem. It's an issue I think that is not talked about. It's kind of like pushed under the rug because you can't really talk about it with your parents because they don't understand exactly where you're coming from as your parents. Like you'll get the typical, oh well, you don't have to worry about that no more, or you're more than that. They're gonna encourage you. They're your parents, like. And with the peers, it's with the coaches. It's like coaches don't really talk about that. Like if you went to college and played a D1 sport, they don't really. They make you all kind of subliminally think you're going to the league or playing after college. And when you don't, it's kind of like, okay, you want to coach, or you know, they they don't ever get this. Coaches don't really ever get to see who you are outside of that athlete. They kind of just see you as that for the most part. And yeah, they know you have a person, have interests and other things that you enjoy. But in revolving to, you know, discover kind of like, oh, well, this is Jake. He likes Dragon Ball Z and he likes painting. So he can play the piano like he's a musician. Like they don't really, they might know some things, but they don't really see you outside of the athlete. And then it's kind of really hard to talk with your peers as well, just because it's kind of like a little embarrassing thing to talk about, like it's opening up. And with sports and whatnot, and this topic also, transparency does not only relate to sports. I'm just using that as my prime example, because that is me. In the future, I will have guests on that will talk about their experience through this and whatnot, and how, it's basically to help people get, cope with kind of like what they're no longer doing and focusing on the person that they trying to become, or helping somebody who might, soon might be going through this. So this is for a lot of people. But anyways, your peers, they might not understand because they might not understand. They might understand, but it's not really spoken about because you just don't talk like that. You're like you don't go to your friend and be like, like I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm worth outside of this. It's hard to admit that, we all got this ego inside, and the ego is not easily dropped because when playing a sport in college, you're the man or the woman, you're head honcho, you the captain, you the deputy, and you haven't learned. Most haven't learned to kind of show that weakness and vulnerability of being like, oh, this isn't going to work out for me, and I'm having trouble mentally figuring out who I am and what my purpose is outside of this sport. So now getting into me. So this is my little story. Um, I played sports all growing up, yada yada yada, football, basketball, track mostly, and I went to people knew who I was. I remember one day this girl on the bus, she was like, I have an older brother, and she was like, "Oh, you're such and such's brother. You're the athlete. We just know you as the athlete." And at the time, I was like, "Oh, cool, that's awesome. Like, I appreciate y'all recognize game. Y'all recognize what's up." And I always remember her. She said that because she's like, "Oh yeah, you're the sports one." And kind of put me in a box. And even then, I was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm more than that, but I'll take it because she was propping me up." And high school, you'll take anything, because I went to a big school and everyone's kind of just walking over each other. But yeah, I did all the sports and whatnot. People knew who I was because of that. This basically was my identity. I felt why I mean everyone's asking when's the next game or you got practice or this. And I always had to revolve around that. And so I had a lot of other interests. I played competitive video games. What else was I into? I was into music heavily. Um and I was into, a lot of like strategy games, StarCraft, World of Warcraft, these other things. And actually going like uh, comedy shows too. But since I was an athlete, I was like, okay, like didn't really talk about that too much. Let me stay in my lane. Let me do my thing. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, you're not gonna talk about how you're feeling in high school, especially as a guy. It's a little difficult. Women, y'all can talk about that a little more than guys. Just guys are different. But anywho, did all that. Um, it was very, very well. Did very well in high school. Was all state in track and field. So I'm the dude. I'm that dude, the athlete. So it's time to go to college. Go to college, boom, playing sport again. Now your first year I did two sports. I was a dual athlete, so that's really all I did. That was my life. Didn't really know anything outside of that. Um, and then I only did one sport after my freshman year. And so after my freshman year, this is the only time in college where I kind of got a view of kind of like figuring out who I was outside of sports. Is I transferred after my freshman year, and I went to school my sophomore year. Back then in the day, you couldn't just transfer. Nowadays, you can transfer and just play right away. Back then, you had to transfer and sit out a year. And so since I transferred, yeah, I had to sit out a year, and you can't really get too involved with you have some restrictions on what you can and can't do with the team. And so I had restrictions. I couldn't work out all the time with the team or do the practice all the time with the team just because I was doing my year of ineligibility because I transferred. Wish it was, I wish it was now because they don't have to sit out at all. They can transfer 3, 4 times and keep doing the same thing. Ridiculous. It's like the wild, wild west out here. But anywho, I had to sit out. And that year, I was kind of like living a normal student life. And on my back of my head, I was like, okay, this is just time being. Like, I'm going to go back in the springtime. It was pretty much just a semester in the springtime. I'm going to, be with the team, get my grind on, yada, yada, yada. But I told myself, so I'm transferring schools, let me get involved in as much things as possible. So I got involved in like a business fraternity. I was working at the student center, refing. I was coaching swim, and I didn't even know how to swim at the time. I was going to every little event possible because my old school was smaller and it didn't have all these things. And so this new one gave me a chance to kind of just get involved and meet a lot of people. I wanted to meet a lot of people. I always wanted to do that. Just meet a lot of people, talk to them, you know, have that kind of communion to where or community to where I could, reach out to this person, reach out to that person, and do this or do that. I didn't want to limit myself and put myself in a box. And so that was a very kind of like eye-opening semester of kind of being a regular student. I was never a regular student in high school because I always played sports. And that was the first time I kind of got to like not have like the pressure of athletics on my back and socially as well. But slightly socially because people knew like I told people like, yeah, I'm on the football team, but I can't do anything this year. So it was like half and half. Um, but and I kind of had to build, so they kind of just assumed the whole thing. But anywho, back on the team after the first semester, and it's business as usual. It's pretty much college sports and college football is your life. You have to live, breathe, eat that, sleep that, if you want to be good. I mean, some people they say that you only can do two out of these three things. You can either sleep, party, or work out or practice. Not work out. Eat, sleep. No, eat, sleep, sleep. Oh, you can pick two of these three. Eat two out of these three things. Eat three out of these four things. You can't do all four. It was sleep, party, work out, essentially, or study. You could not do all four. And I tried my best to do all four. I mean, you got to pick three of them. And sometimes I gave up one or the other, but overall I tried to do everything, which was a lot. But it's college. You got to have a good time. I definitely did have a good time too. Kind of had. But anywho, that kept me busy throughout all my years of college. Just football, especially D1 football. Went to University of Missouri. It's pretty much a lifestyle. I mean, so I'll just to give a quick rundown. In the fall, you have the games. You have fall camp, practice, games. You work out in the morning. Usually, the typical day is like you work out in the morning, probably 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. You go to class, 6 to 7 something. So you go to class, come back around 2, 3, get taped, do rehab, film, study film, whatever you do. Um, so you have the hours between like 8 and 2 o'clock off technically, but you have class, you got to go eat, doing all that. And then once practice starts around 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock, you have practice till about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then after that, you have film study usually, or you rehab again. And then by that time, you eat. After that, it's probably get home around 7, 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock some nights, depending on what you have to do and how the week's looking. And then, yeah, you pretty much have 2 hours to the day of yourself, maybe three, I guess, depending on what time you go to bed. I was probably going to bed around like 11, 12 o'clock every night. Um, so yeah, that's the fall and the games. You have the game Saturday, Sundays. You had workouts on Sundays. So every day you're doing something. The only time I think that you had like freedom to kind of go do your own thing was like Sunday afternoon if you weren't working out. But that time you want to kind of get some rest, maybe watch some football, whatever. So that's your life, like every single day. Then when the season's over in the off season, you'll get maybe like a couple weeks off for Christmas, depending on how the team does. Come back in January and start winter workouts. Now, winter workouts started 5 or 6 in the morning, depending on where you go. Last for 2 or 3 hours in the morning. Work out in the morning, go to class, come back afternoon. Sometimes you have another workout, but usually you don't. Probably one workout a day, but people doing their own things and whatnot. And then some days when spring ball starts, and it depends on the team, but most start in March. You have that for a good month. And so sometimes you'll have workouts in the morning, class, and spring ball. And spring ball is kind of the same schedule as fall ball practice to a certain degree. And then you have scrimmages in certain days. So springtime, you have more time off. Some you not have practice every Saturdays. Most Saturdays you do, though. And Sundays, you pretty much have Sundays off. There's no really workouts on Sundays. And yeah, that's all of spring. When spring ball's over, you're studying film, lifting extra weights, doing whatever you can as an athlete. You don't want to just do it lifting extra weights. Doing whatever you can as an athlete. You don't want to just do what they give you. You want to do more if you want to be good. That's just how it goes. It's kind of a duh or unspoken type of thing. I mean, nobody's just going to go, here you go, do this, and you're not going to come back. Some people did, but, it was expected to do more, which is how it should be. Anywho, that's the schedule. And then summertime, you have summer workouts, 4 or 5 days a week. It's not as strenuous, but usually have workouts in the morning, sometimes 2 times a day. So you have workouts in the morning, then you have off till maybe, I don't know, 3, 4 o'clock, and then you do like 7 on 7, or you do drills, team drills, and that would last about hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending. They're usually player ran, so I'd say closer to 2, 3 hours. The summertime is kind of when you have your time to kind of do what you want per se, but even then, you're kind of still restricted. You can't really go on any. It's taboo, at least where I went. It's taboo to go do a study abroad. It's taboo not to show up to the workouts because they're technically voluntary, but they're unless you're like the star of the team and your spot is not gonna get taken, you need to be there, or your spot might get taken. So that's speak for itself. You know who's trying to ride the bench. So yeah, that's pretty much all the season schedule and how it worked out for college football. Essentially, I mean, I know nowadays they don't practice as long and things are different now. I went to college in 2011 through 2015, so things are a little different, but that's generally still the same schedule. That's generally still how things work. And so with all that time for football, I was like, okay, when do you have time for anything else? You really don't to have too much. Like some people have their own hobbies. I know some people know how to play like an instrument, or some people they like playing video games, or they like partying, or whatever it is. You can put your extracurriculars in there, but it's never a priority to kind of figure out what you're trying to do outside of it because it's like a job. I think I'm glad that players are getting paid now because the schedule is rigorous. You really don't have time for many other things. I squeezed in a lot of other things. I worked at the same time. I was in a fraternity. I was uh, going to events, like doing a whole bunch of different things with the little time I had. Um, so it's possible, but it's really not. I couldn't get the full load of it. I kind of just had to be like at 1 foot in, 1 foot out type setting. And so, yeah, um, when you're there, like we see they have signs up everywhere that says the percentages of people that graduate from the school. Then you have a percentage of how many people graduate with a master's. Then you have a percentage of how many people go to the NFL. And then you have a percentage of how many people maybe play Canadian football. You have all these percentages, and the percentages are very low. Like I think it's 1, 2, 3% of how many players on each team goes to the NFL from Mizzou. Alabama, they probably got a way higher percentage. So it's a little different. But most colleges don't. It's 3, 4% max. Because there's over 120 players on the team. And maybe 10, if you're lucky, will have an NFL career longer than 4 years. Most schools have an average of like 5 to 7 players either get drafted, excluding like LSU, Alabama, those big time schools who just people go there for the sport and nothing else specific. Um, so yeah, um, and what kind of goes down is like somebody would say, well, you can kind of have idea if you're going to go to the NFL or not, or you can tell how much someone's playing. That's true. However, there's a little bit of psychological warfare going on with the team, with being on a team. And how that is basically, I don't want to say they trick you into thinking that you're going to the NFL because that's false. I just say they give you a false sense of security that you can. Like it's very possible, which is of course it's possible. Like nothing's ever 0%. However, it's unlikely. And they have to, I think colleges need to do a better job getting players prepared for if that doesn't happen. Unless you're, projected to go first round, you got to prepare for that. Eventually the NFL is going to end too if you go. But I don't think the school does a good job of getting people mentally prepared of how they're going to figure out who they are outside of that. Yeah, you're going to have to get a job and you're going to do whatever you're doing outside of that. But when that's all you know, like I revert back to, when that's all you known for, that's all you do every day. You heard the schedule. That's all you live for the last 4 or 5 years. It's gonna take a lot of mental adjustment to kind of get back to reality. They treat football players, especially in college, better than the regular student. They always say, you're not a regular student, you're not regular, you gotta be better than everyone else. But when that's taken away, kind of like, well, dang, I thought I was better than everyone else. Who am I? Like, what's going on? And that can take a toll. That can definitely take a toll. And when I say I'm gonna revert back to sorry, I keep running back and jumping a little bit, but first episode, we gonna get through these things. Um, when you revert back, I'm gonna revert back to when I said the psychological warfare type is when you play football in college, they have these things called, at least D1 schools, they have junior pro day. Now, pro day generally is an event to where the seniors have all that go do like kind of a scouting combine. You jump, see how high you can jump, see how fast you can run a 40, see how many times you can bench 225, etc. All these things. But they have it for the juniors as well, and some scouts come, and so you're preparing. Like they tell you, like all juniors get ready. Maybe not as many scouts as a regular pro day, but they're gonna put on a mock to prepare you for the next year. So when you're a junior, you're already kind of like, okay, like I got to show out. This is my time, and they don't. I don't want to say they force everyone to, but it looks kind of silly upon you if you don't participate. It looks like it's one of those voluntary things. And so, when you do that stuff, you kind of get an idea of how fast you're running, high you're jumping, yada yada yada. And when you do that, it kind of gives you like, dang, like I'm ready for the real pro day. The pro day's main pro day, not just for seniors, it's for people not coming back to school the next year. So some juniors and redshirt sophomores can do that because you have to spend 3 years in college before you're eligible for the NFL. And I lost my train of thought. You have to spend 3 years before you're eligible for the NFL. And so if someone declares after their junior year, then they go to the pro day, but they don't have to do the junior pro day. So the junior pro day is mostly for juniors who are not declaring until their senior year, essentially. But they kind of I don't want to say they make everyone do it, but it's kind of like, you gotta do it. Like we're doing this is junior pro day. All right, boom, boom, boom. We doing it. And I remember when I did it, it was like I had good numbers, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, wow, like I'm ready for the next step, which is a year from now. And so we do the junior pro day. They jot it down, move on. But with that, it's kind of like you get locked in this mindset of like, okay, like this is for real, for real. Like I could go to the NFL, even if, the chances are like unlikely. That kind of like brings your height back to something that's very unlikely, which I think the junior pro day is good because it helps get players ready for the pro day. But I think it should be more of talked about to the players. Like if I was a coach or somebody working on the staff, I'd be like, okay, we have junior or strength staff mostly runs that. Like, okay, we got the junior pro day coming. I want to talk to each of you because we had sorry to interrupt myself. We had a great athletic not athletic director, athletic strength and conditioning director, Pat Ivy. He was amazing. He's at LSU now, I believe. One of the best dudes in the game. Like he knows a lot, and he got our mental right. But and we had a lot of mental talks and whatnot, and how to mentally be ready for anything essentially, except this apparently. But for the most part, they killed their jobs. The whole staff did amazing. I love them all to this day. But it would be nice if I think before that we each had a talk and be like, okay, like what are your plans? It's funny because football never does this. They would I wish they would have asked, what are your plans after college? And then they could give you an assessment like, look, like, do you really want to do this? Like, you don't have to do it if you don't think you're going. And we could talk through that and get, that mental part out the way, because if you force everyone to do it, essentially they're giving them that hope. And hope is like the one thing that just kind of keeps you going no matter how bad and dire things look. You're going to keep on moving, And some players would be like, it's obvious, like, look, this ain't going to happen, And they kind of know that too, but it helps if someone else kind of brings it to the fold rather than dealing with it all yourself, because you're kids. You don't know how to deal with that kind of stuff. You've done sports all your life. Like, you're not just going to like say, oh, I quit and give up, or it's not going to work. you're gonna still like do your best and kind of just go with through the motions and then kind of see how things are gonna play out. But I kind of wish they would have just sat us down one by one and been like, okay, like this, you're doing this junior pro day. What are your plans after, say you don't go to the NFL? Do you have any plans? Do you need any help with assistance? Do you want to coach? Like what, tell me kind of what's on your mind and how you're feeling about this in general and how you were feeling as a player. And that was not there. So it kind of just, like I said, gave you this false sense of security to where, oh, I might go to the NFL or I might make it big. And the chances are very slim to none. Anywho, fast forward past that, you're done with that. Senior year, let's go. And it's time to do senior year, blah blah blah. Senior fall season's over with. And for my specific situation, so how it went with me is I graduated after the season was over with. Um, and I kind of, what I was planning for was, luckily, luckily, this was back in Stone Age when Netflix was new, and I finally downloaded Netflix my junior year. It's like the winter, my junior or sophomore year. I can't remember. I think it was like sophomore year, the winter of that. My retro sophomore year because I went to school for 4.5 years. Um, I was watching Netflix and I was looking at all these shows. Like, wow, I didn't realize TV had all these things and these options. And I was watching some shows, and they got me introduced to like acting and performing and all this stuff, which I knew about because revert back to my music loving days. I loved listening to R&B, hip hop, all that stuff. But I was watching these shows and they were kind of teaching. They were showing the kind of process of kids starting out. I say high schoolers starting out and becoming stars. There's a couple shows I watched that kind of influenced me. The first one was Weeds. That didn't have nothing to do with that, what I just said. It was just kind of like, I liked the show and I was looking at it like, dang, like I could live in that town because it kind of was really realistic to me. The second one, which is embarrassing to say, no, it's Glee. And the only reason I watched it is because it kept popping up as an advertising, popping up, popping up, popping up, popping up. It's like, fine, I will finally watch this show. Like I heard some girls in my class in high school talked about it, but I wasn't paying attention. And they were obsessed with it. And so I finally just decided to watch this show by myself, just like chilling. And I was like, wow. One of the first scenes in the show is this dude singing in the bathroom stall, and this coach. Is it the coach? It was the coach. No, it wasn't a coach. It was a music teacher. It was a music teacher. He came and heard him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, he sounds like an angel." And then, he ends up bringing him into the club, and the dude plays football as well, so that was kind of like relatable. And he kind of was going through some similar things that I was thinking because people thought it was like, oh, like, why are you singing and doing this like in High School Musical settings, essentially. And if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was kind of like eye opening because I was like, wow, like this is relatable because when High School Musical came out, I was like middle school. So it was like, yeah, we don't really, it just wasn't, I wasn't there yet. I wasn't in high school. I was in middle school. So I couldn't really relate very well to kind of doing multiple things, you know? But I was at this pass to where I was like, I was like, okay, like, wow, like I'm interested in this. It seems cool. And then I started watching more shows and the show basically, they trying to become famous, like on Broadway, or they're trying to be TV film actors, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, dang, like I could, that's how it works. It kind of shows you kind of how it works in a nutshell. I ain't gonna say it's exactly how it works. It's a little fabricated, but you get my point. You've seen the show. And that kind of like made me think. So I was Googling like how to be an actor, yada, yada, yada. I'm from Missouri. That's not where people look up. That's not what people do. That's not any aspirations of anyone I knew per se. I mean, I did music growing up in choir, but I didn't do no acting classes. I didn't do no drama club. I didn't do none of that. I didn't have any friends that did it either. And we're in Missouri. Like, last thing I'm thinking about is New York or Hollywood. But the show kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, like I'm interested in this. And so I got really engaged and followed suit on everything of the show. And I was like, dang, I could do that. I could be in that show. 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 And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's try this. Like, let me see. So I started taking some acting classes while I was at Mizzou. I want drama classes. I ain't gonna say they're acting classes, drama, and they were okay. I mean, it's Missouri, like I said. We don't. That's not what they specialize in, or communications journalism school. Like, they don't specialize in all that stuff. But it was interesting to kind of be a part of that world and find something that I enjoyed just as much, and something I could strive to just as much as football. And so I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And so we took the classes, and going fast forwarding back to my senior year, I luckily had a gracious counselor. She was on my ass about everything, and we didn't talk too much about that in partake, or like, what I wanted to do long term. It was kind of like, okay, what are you going to do right after college? And so I was thinking, and I was like, well, I kind of want to do this acting thing. Like, what do you think? And she's like, she didn't know much about it, but she's like, look, you would have to move to like Los Angeles or New York. And I was like, okay. She's like, but it's expensive. And she's like, let's Google, just YouTube a lot of things. I was like, all right, I'm gonna YouTube it. And so when I YouTube did it, it's like, okay, like I saw people like, oh, I'm living week to week, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, like it's hard out here. And I was like, I can do it. That athlete confidence is like, yo, you're gonna overcome whatever. You don't got no doubts, like it's gonna work. You're not worried about when, you're not worried about if, just when. And so I kind of made a plan right before I was graduating. I was like, okay, I need a job. I need to do something in order to save money to go to Los Angeles. Los Angeles was my goal. Put it set in stone. My mom's side of the family's out there. Simple. I could make it kind of seamlessly, the whole transition. And so I decided to get a teaching certification during school. And then once I graduated that fall, I think like my graduation date was like this mid-December. So I had 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks off until I started teaching. Like, schools, high school and middle school and elementary school starts pretty much the first week of January, right when New Year's is up, they start school again. So that's when I started. I started teaching. Whew, it was a long, it was a lot of headaches. But I was teaching in Kansas City, taught every grade because I was subbing first, and then I got put on for basic teaching, middle school English and history. And I did that for 5 months, as well as got some other jobs. And all these other jobs, I don't get into detail because it doesn't matter, but they were just all about saving money, saving money, saving money, saving money so I can go out to LA. About saving money, saving money, saving money, saving money so I can go out to LA, do my thing, and, you know, be in the movies. Now, that's when I also, I'll revert back. So I'm gonna rewind back, go back to college real quick before we get into that part. So I have my plan set. Football season's ending up, um, and my senior year I had a second degree ACL sprain, so it was kind of rough on me just mentally. Like I just wasn't involved much. I was mentally kind of checked out. I knew I had this other goal set, and it was a lot different than anyone else on the team that I knew of. I mean, I couldn't. I feel like I couldn't talk to nobody about it because they would just kind of mentally. I thought they were going to shut it down or laugh at it or something. So I kept it to myself, and I was just like, all right. I found some of the people trying to do this job, some other people trying to do this job, but essentially everyone was planning on coming. There was this hope still that everyone, you come back and do this pro day, which the pro day usually goes on in no, March, February or March. I can't remember. February, March. And that's when do the real thing. Like the junior pro day, the pro day is the real thing of the junior pro day. You have all the scouts there, you're running your 40, bench press, uh, squats, long jump, all that stuff. You're testing all that to see, if the scouts wants to bring you to a camp for NFL. I had two teams look at me, emailed me after the junior pro day to like my stuff, and it was I don't get the teams, but two teams interested that spoke to me privately because they called certain people in to talk to them, and at the junior year going to senior year, I was like, oh yeah, like definitely, I can do it. Like I'm not playing that much, but I can do it. And so after the season was over, and I was like not mentally in the best spot because of like how the season went. There was a lot of stuff that went down that season, especially. But I didn't play as much as I thought I would have, and I wasn't being treated as greatly as I wish I would have by the coaches and whatnot. there was a lot of little things going on during that season. If you want, look up Mizzou 2015 football, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I won't get into that. That's a whole nother story. But maybe that's a story for another day. Maybe I'll give my perspective on it. But that's a story for a whole nother day. Anywho, I did not know if I wanted to participate in the project. I did not know if that was my. I thought it was, I have to. You have to get ready for that. You got to work out 2, 3 times a day. You gotta eat right. You pretty much gotta work out like you still on the team, but not on the team and on your own accord, unless you can afford a trainer or you got a deal with a scout, not a scout, a agent that's gonna find all this stuff for you. That's on you. And it's basically a full-time workout job, and at the time I didn't have any money. I couldn't literally, I'm going back to live with my mother at the time, so I couldn't afford to do that. I needed to make money, and so I still worked out like the first month I was back home, like I was going to do it. But then I was just like, like I'm going to look like a fool with this thing, like, because I'm not projected to get drafted at all, and it was just a far cry per se. But everyone else is doing it. And I'm talking to other people like, yeah, you're doing it. And even the coaches called me like, you're doing it, right? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, ah. And I was trying to focus on this new thing that I'm doing, but I'm stuck on the old thing. So mentally it's like I'm still messed up a little bit. But yeah, I think like a week before I call the coach calls me, I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. It's like, why? Why? Like, why you should do this, blah blah blah. I was like, I just told him like, look, it's just I can't. I didn't really give much reasoning or explanation, but I the reasoning was I was focused. I have this new goal now, and I focus on this new thing. And I've already, at this point, I've already started doing like plays and taking classes, and really investing my time and energy into this. And I'm trying to hold on to this old thing that's a possibility that's just like fading slowly. And yeah, I kind of just was like, look, it's time to kind of just put it up. And yeah, it wasn't easy. Definitely was a difficult decision, but I didn't. I wish I would have had more people kind of talk to me. Not that I wish I would have did it per se, but just kind of like really put things into perspective on like what route you want to go. Now, I'm not gonna say it was the best. I'm not gonna say it right. I'm not gonna say it was wrong to do it or not do it. But my particular position was I did not think I was gonna be like in the NFL per se, and I thought my time was like up. So it was pointless for me to do this pro day because it just wasn't happening, coach. Like it just wasn't. But I knew I had the ability, but I didn't have the intangibles, and the intangibles were kind of, you know, enough statistics in the game and respect by your peers and on the team to respect as in like you could be in the NFL. Like people talk to me in college like, oh, there's no way in hell he was going to the NFL, and so that kind of plays with your head a little bit. But I did have, I mean, I had good physical intangibles and like all those kind of things where, if I look back, I probably could have made it. But at the time, my mental just was very, nah, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And so, yeah, decided not to do it. And that was kind of like the nail in the coffin with that. People were kind of surprised. People called me. I was like surprised that I wasn't there, and they're like, "Where you at?" I was like, "Yo, what?" So, I guess others' perspective of me is different than what I thought it was. But hey, that's the whole like being able to find people to talk to about these certain things and get a different perspective. I didn't want to do that because it was embarrassing to do at the time to ask these questions. So that's kind of on me, I guess. You take responsibility on me. But anywho, yeah. After that, did all my stuff, figured out that's what I wanted to do. Now that gets me back kind of during this time. This is when the identity issue started popping up. Right after was when I started teaching. Taught these kids, and they would find out I played. Taught these kids, and they would find out I played football. And like, oh my gosh, like, are you doing the NFL? Oh, like, this guy, like, oh my gosh, you're famous. I'm like, no, like, I'm not that dude. Like, I'm done. I've told you I'm done. But it kind of messes with you a little bit because you feel you're being told you're still this dude when you're really not. And so you kind of just like don't know how to respond to that. And these are children telling me this. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is happening right now? These kids are like, and then, they find out like kids will rag on you for anything. So you got, but especially, I'm their teacher now. And they're like, oh my gosh, like you had horrible statistics, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yo, like, you can't really say anything either. Like, they're kids. Um, so that was tough to deal with. More the ego thing. The ego is kind of taking a little blow. But yeah, no, in regards to that, and then like other people I would talk to, like, oh, like you still want to play, like do you miss it, this and that. And I was like, you're always reminded, and so you thinking like, damn, is this all I am? Like, am I just some washed up athlete who can only reminisce in the glory days? And I knew I had a new goal in sight at the time. But at the same time, you're always talked about that. You play a big B1 sport, you're always talked about too. You're always talked about it of it, and you are constantly reminded of what could have been or what should have been or how it was. And that can play with your psyche a little bit because you're always thinking like, dang, like this is this is what I'm known for. This is who people know me as. Like you do something different besides maybe coach or be a trainer. Like you don't they kind of you get mentally kind of boxed in a little bit. And I didn't want anything to like when I was done, I didn't want anything to do with football. I didn't want to watch football, I didn't want to play football, I didn't want to talk about football, I didn't want to do nothing. But I kind of had to because that was, people knew me as. And it kind of plays at you a little bit. It kind of plays at you a lot actually, because you like some sleepless nights to where like, dang, did I make the right choice, or should I play Canadian football, or should I go play overseas in Germany or somewhere? Like, there's plenty of opportunity everywhere. Some people play till they're freaking 40 out in Australia. Now they don't pay that much, but I'm not. I wasn't. That wasn't my sights, and that wasn't my. It was either NFL or nothing for me. I didn't. I didn't. There's nothing wrong with Canadian. Nothing wrong with German football. That's great, but your body gets banged up. It's just a lot. But when people keep telling you like, "Oh, there's this opportunity," I mean, I had a guy reach out to the Canadian Football League and brought the coaches down to my hometown because he wanted me to do a workout for them. I'm just like, you guys, like, it's hard. It's not easy to at that age too, like 22, 23, to tell people like no to that because they're like, this is a great opportunity. Why would you not do this? You have the ability. I'm like, well, yeah, I have the ability to do it, but they don't ever ask you, what do you want to do? Is this really what you want? Like, really? Because when they see potential, they're gonna just say like, oh, you should do this, regardless of what you feel. And that's the toughest thing. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't. It's not really spoken about like the identity crisis that you kind of deal with post a, playing a sport, and I'll say being forced out of it per se. A lot of pro athletes deal with that, but the thing is, I'll say a difference between them is like they kind of have the money and the resources to kind of, if you play in the NFL more than 4 years, I guess you have the money and the resources kind of just slow ball figure that out. You can slowly kind of figure it out, but you have the money and the means to cope with it with that. I graduated with not $100 in my bank account, so I had to get to work. And going from something one extreme to the next, to the opposite extreme, which is the arts, it was like I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And then every time I didn't want to bring up football ever, because every time I brought it up, I felt like it discredited me, because like, oh, you're just some dumb football player, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And so, but at the same time, that's all people wanted to talk about at the same time. So it's a lot of mental battles going on. And unless you have somebody who's maybe been there, or older person or something, you're gonna get in a tough spot. And so, and I mean, I've seen plenty of examples of when people graduate and they're done playing, like they get cut from a team or whatever, they kind of turn into a shell of themselves. They stop communicating on social media or text. They don't ever post anything. They kind of just disappear. Like some delete social media, some delete everything because they don't want to be reminded of what could have been. And I think it's important to talk about these things with people, especially growing up, say you're a young athlete, you want to play in college, you want to go to NFL, that's great. Totally try for it, like 100%. But when something is your only identity, like I told you this as this football schedule in college, I told you everything that was required. I told you, pretty much the breakdown of everything is, you got to make sure that you have something else that you're heavily interested in and heavily divulged in to kind of give you that expressive outlet because not everyone is just only football only. Like that's the only thing that matters, you know. But you're taught that it is the only thing that matters in college, and sometimes even just growing up, like this is all that matters. Like you live, breathe, sleep, eat football, and you have to do that in college. You have to do that. You have to live, breathe, eat, sleep football. But when it doesn't work out, it's like all those years kind of just like, psh, dang, now what do I do? I got to pick up the pieces. I got to find something to do, and that's kind of the road, the hard the hard road taken because unfortunately college coaches don't say, hey, like they don't push you to try like other things or like pursue other even I'll say activities. Forget the classes, like you have to take the classes or whatever, but they encourage athletes to take easy classes because it'll get you um it'll just get you easy grade, easy passing grade. Outside of the student athletes that major in maybe engineering or something like that, to where they kind of have an idea like, okay, I want to be an engineer when I graduate, or I want to be a teacher maybe. Um, Outside of them, they don't even them like they make football's everything, and if you don't have something that you enjoy to do or passionate about or have an idea about a career or a trajectory that you want your life to go outside of that, it's going to be very mentally difficult when you graduate, and it could last for a year, it could last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I know some people who I played with who still kind of like are doing a job that they don't want to do because they never really got a chance to figure out or discover who they were outside of football, what they wanted to do, what they like, simple things like, what do you like to do? Like, I don't know. I like playing football. I was like, what else? Like, you have to like something else. Like, I never thought about it. It's like, wow, that's kind of scary to only want to do that. And luckily for me, I kind of found it on my own. It kind of just randomly fell in. And then slowly but surely, like other things fell, like my entrepreneurship, my enjoyment for finance, my love to dance, like a hip hop dancer, my enjoyment of entrepreneurship. I have my own small businesses, how to make money, work on my own time. That all slowly came. And it was discovered as time went along. Luckily, I found something to strive for really hard in college that was outside of football to where it was like, okay, if this doesn't work, I know where I'm going to pivot to. And mentally, it was still tricky. Mentally, it was still tough to, disillude myself from being like the football player because going to art space and say you play football, you get discredited. But over time, each year, it became a little easier and easier and easier because people started seeing me for who I am rather than just what I do. Like, I'm not just the football player, and people introduce me. They used to introduce me, still do sometimes. Oh, this is DeAndre. He used to play football in the zoo. I don't want that introduction because that cripples me. You're already crippling me and putting me into a box where people think they know everything already and like know about me when they don't know anything. You know, People would do that all the time. They would say, "Hey, this is James. He played football here. This is Sally. She went swimming. She did swimming here." And that's all you are, and that's all who you are. And that mentally messes with your head a lot. It does. And I think it's important to kind of get through this, just kind of talk about what you're dealing with someone you trust, someone who's close. Trying new things too helps cope with it as well. I remember I was just trying everything new. I mean, I had all this time now. I don't have this crazy rigorous schedule where I was trying so many different new things. I found a lot of new, interests and passions and whatnot. But it's like, dang, like, where was this before? Oh yeah, I was doing football stuff, which is, that was my schedule. That's the decision I chose. But I just wish in college sports, they kind of gave you more of a creative outlet, and they have all these resources, maybe some people to kind of talk to figure out kind of what you want, because they have people come talk to you all the time about, former players who do this, and most of the time they bring people in who's a car salesman or who works in insurance or who a salesman, things like that, and it's like, yeah, those are good jobs, but I don't I didn't want to do any of those things. It was not fitting my personality type to be selling cars. Nothing wrong with selling cars, but it wasn't fitting my personality type to sell cars or kind of do something that just seemed like a former athlete would do. I had a very different track mind um, when it came to what I wanted to do, and then that kind of evolved. But when they bring these people in, it kind of puts you even more of a box. Like, dang, like this is one thing I got to do. One of the things I only could do when I graduate. Instead of keeping like the mind open, and they should say, you know what, guys, like we're gonna bring in people who do all these different things, and they did play football or they didn't play football. They bring in a lot of people who used to play or do some kind of sport, when I wish they would just bring a lot of various things in, or talk to you one on one, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Um, just to kind of get your mind, growing, because some person could want to be like an entrepreneur and they want to start their own business, and it's like we don't really have those examples per se come in when the football resources have these examples come in. Like, perfect example, Deion Sanders in Colorado has so many people coming in that do so many different things. That's not really the normal job, but he has these people come in, and their players are exposed to seeing like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could live here, I could go here. I think that's amazing. I wish more colleges would kind of get out their box of traditionalness and bring maybe a magician in, something that players might think is corny, a magician, or a that one girl who was pimping out all those dudes that Deion Sanders brought in. I forget her name. That she was like, she's the dude who dated PJ Washington, and they had like a baby together, and he's paying so much money for child support, it's ridiculous. But that girl, you can look her up. But just different aspects of kind of like life and just people, and that'll make your brain kind of start thinking different things. I mean, the only things I can remember at Mizzou is we had things I named before. We had this dude that was in the army. We had a couple dudes that was in the military. They're trying to send me a message. And just very 9 to 5 type of jobs that were fine, but just not for me. And yeah, that I think it just they have the resources to give you a lot of exposure to things. Now, granted, the coaches they only can do what they know. You can't just expect someone to do it if they don't know it. But I think it's very important, if you're doing a sport or something like that, you need to kind of really look yourself in the mirror and be like, what do I like? What are my, I know it's stupid, it sounds stupid. What are my hobbies? What do I dislike? Like, what could I not see myself doing? What do I see somebody doing that I like? Do I like Mr. Beast? Do I like Logan Paul or anything like that? Like, how are they doing what they're doing? They had to get out their own comfort box and get out of their own mental way, because some people thought it was stupid of what they're doing. But now they're doing things that everyone wants to do. I didn't want to tell anybody for the longest I was doing acting. Like, I thought it was just like, I can't tell anyone until I'm like famous and in movies. But that's ridiculous, because then if I don't even buy into my own dreams, then how do I expect anyone else to? And they didn't get there overnight. They were probably laughed at as they were making these silly little videos all the time. They're like, oh, you're stupid. That's whack. That's cheesy. That's this, that's that. But now look at them, I mean, they're not the best example for all, but I'm just using one. And when it comes to athletics, you're used to submerging your emotions and feelings, which you kind of have to do. It's kind of like military-esque, but I think that it's good to kind of show yourself, show who you are, show what you're about, and kind of just, they need to just say, forget about everyone else, do what you want. If you like drawing comics, we got somebody for you. If you like, you know, reality TV and you want to work behind the scenes, here you go. Here's these people for this. Or if you like music and you want to be a producer, here's somebody for this. The outlets that they give you aren't really the most creative, because anybody could go on LinkedIn and find a job in insurance. Anybody could go on LinkedIn and find a job in sales. Like those are very easy, but they don't really cater to. I don't think they cater to what people really want to do. I think those are just a lot of people settle for those because they're given essentially and they're stable income, whatnot. In today's society, a safe job. But that can also mentally get in your way because you could do those jobs like, oh, like I really wanted to do this, but I don't know how to do it, yada yada yada. And so they're already mentally in their way with being a former athlete and then now dealing with this job. That's a whole nother topic. I won't try and dive too deep into that because I do talk about that as well. But yeah, that's what this podcast is about. It's gonna be about talking through with people because I will have guests on here pretty much all the time. Talking with people about how they're mentally overcoming a stigma and a stereotype, whether they used to be a rollerblader all growing up and now they want to uh, be a painter, or they were a soccer player in college or growing up and that's all they knew and now they want to work in the media. It can be various things, but it's about people understanding that it's okay to kind of speak about these things and okay to speak about your mental struggles that you had to that you currently deal with or have dealt with in the past to get past these things, and the identity crisis that you're going through or went through because you were told constantly you were this, you were this, you were told constantly you were this, you were this, you were this, but and you can't do this, but you just were not pushed or you know props to do or be anything else than what that is. I mean, a big thing that I had to deal with was just kind of shedding the I'm a football player type of dude. I guess I like football still, but that's not who I am. That's a former version of myself that only was revolved around sports, and I'm not that anymore. And it's difficult to kind of say because you don't want to be. You always want to be athletic. You always want to be like that guy, and that's the man. But you got to be real with yourself. You got to humble yourself, and you got to drop your ego for these things to kind of come and really become who you are. You're not just born to just be this thing. When the clock stops, when the game's over, you're born to be more than that. You're born to be your own person, not just this thing. Let this thing kind of define who you are. So that's about everything. I hope that made sense. This is my first podcast ever that I did. I'm trying to keep it around an hour. Um, and I feel like I covered pretty much everything. I'm working on it, y'all. We working on it, all right? This is the first draft that we're going to make public. And I appreciate y'all joining in with me. I appreciate y'all listening. I hope I kind of gave a good take. And I hope maybe I could help a person or two kind of, get over certain things. I hope I can, help people think honestly and like really learn about who you are, what you want to do, and know that nothing defines you. Because I thought something defined me for the longest, and I thought that was my whole world. That was my whole world, and that was my everything. But life moves on, and when it does, you can't just sit in the past or sit in the past. You kind of just go on autopilot. You have to take action and control your own destination, control your own journey, control the car that you're driving in. And it helps a lot because you feel internally fulfilled, spiritually fulfilled, mentally fulfilled, and I just hope I can help people know that they're more than just an athlete. I hate like the saying, just shut up and dribble. Like that's basically goes with what I'm saying. Is get out there, try new things, find out who you are outside of just the athlete. Especially in college, and you watch this right now in college, you're more than what you're doing. Don't get stuck in a box. Yes, if you want to go pro, if you want to aim for pro, and that's your goal and end all be all, do that. Work every day, work hard, do everything you can, but make sure that you have another outlet. There's always things that can happen, an injury, something that can end it just like that. Make sure you have something else you're interested in, some other things that you were interested in. Make sure that you got something because it can be all that can be taken away, but this can't be taken away. Anyways, I'm gonna end it on that. Sounded like a good line to end on, and I appreciate y'all. Till next time, we'll be back for some more. Take care, y'all. And now we figure out how to turn this off. Here we go. All right, there we go.